Serious, people who had to clean out rooms of someone who had died, family, friend or otherwise. Did you find anything you shouldn't have found and how did it make you feel? My grandma's house had money everywhere. Every purse had at least $100 cash. Suitcases had a few hundred more. Every coffee can or other container in her kitchen had rolls of money. There were even bags of frozen veggies in the freezer that had been split open and money hidden inside. And her bank accounts, thousands upon thousands of dollars. No one had any idea. She lived so simply and never spent a dime on anything unnecessary. I'm sure her financial paranoia was due to growing up in the Great Depression. It made for the best scavenger hunt ever, though. Same when my dad's mother passed. She didn't trust banks, so going through her flat was like a lottery scavenger hunt. A had even cut open the bottom of her mattress and we found about $3,000 in it. After my grandfather died, I found out that he worked for the army in Fort Monmouth. Whenever anyone asked what he did for a living, he said he makes coffee. Turns out his actual job description was classified and nobody knew what it was. Not even my grandma. I look just like him. If I had to guess, it had to do with cryptographic equipment. Fort Monmouth is where all of our crypto equipment would be sent when it needed repairs. When my mother was killed by her ex-husband, I was one of the people tasked with packing our house. He stalked her and would break into the house often. My mother knew but no one else did. As a result, when we were taking things down, like pictures and such, we would find things hidden behind them. Items such as checkbooks to hidden bank accounts from him, or even worse, notebooks full of dates and accounts of events where he would engage her. She had a restraining order on him. Usually these engagements, according to the notebook, were awful. Tires being slashed, her being followed and him coming up to her on day-to-day events berating her. The thing is though, she kept it all secret from the family. What makes it so hard is if she would have told everyone of these things, she might still be here today. I hope that was used as evidence against that bastard and that he's serving life without chance of parole. When my great-grandma passed away, we were cleaning out our house and we found all these liquor bottles that were full of water from 40 years ago when my dad and my uncles had drank all her booze and replaced it with water, lol. My grandmother passed after a blood clot incident. She had several conditions that no doubt led up to this. For example, her medical team decided not to treat her breast cancer because they figured she would die before it would spread. My father, uncle, and my sisters were left to clean out her things from her apartment. She had a lot of old, expired food, like ketchup that had gone completely black. We found things from when she was well and social, like her quilting and handmade soaps, which were beautiful. She has a quilt that had the names of all of our family, but the names were sewn in the individual's handwriting style. However, one day it was just my dad and me going through her bedside table. We found her journal. Toward the end, all of the entries were about how lonely she was, how she only got to see her grandchildren twice a year, and how her own children never saw her unless they needed something. She said she wanted to die. My dad threw it away so his brother would never have to see it. So, yeah, go hug a grandparent. Had to clean up after my grandmother passed. Found a note from back when she was with her second husband, who died in 1995, that she never gave him. She poured her heart out to him and said she couldn't be with him. She knew the timing was hard because he was sick, but she was just done. She must have had a change of heart, but it was hard to read something that carried so much of her pain and know how unhappy she was in his last year. Sometimes people just need to write out their feelings. Sounds like it could have been part of her coping process, giving a voice to that small part of you that just wants to give up. My great aunt died at 100 years old, and I got a fairly new Samsung TV. The TV turned out to be 3D, but she only had one eye. I couldn't shake the thought that some salesman sold an old lady with one eye a 3D TV. Oh, that's fricked up. I lived in my uncle's house for a while after he died and found pieces of his suicide note that no one knew about hidden everywhere. In his books, in his desk, under his mattress, and novel-length diatribe of madness. That sounds creepy as heck to just be finding those. Mortician here. Did crime scene cleanups for a while. Usually cleaning up after a suicide was always very eerie. We would usually find more suicide notes, or drafted ones. One of our rules apart from the actual cleanup was to throw out any of their toiletries and things the family wouldn't need or want, like clothing, etc. Always thought handling someone's toothbrush whose pool of blood lay next to you was so weird. I'm very desensitized to my work of course, but just seeing photos, handwriting or whatever object that reminded us of the deceased knowing they had just taken their own life right there next to you tended to bother me. I'll always remember one guy who had slit his wrists in his bedroom and bled all over the dang place. He had left over 10 pages of personalized notes in his bedside table addressed to every person he knew closely. Going through them and reading them was really intense. After my grandmother died, I helped my grandfather clean out some of her stuff and found a poem she wrote to the infant child that she lost some 50 years ago. I don't think my grandfather knew about the poem or he forgot about it. That's terribly sad. The blood stains or crap stains everywhere after my dad died from alcohol abuse. I don't know what it was exactly, but I guess I'd expected they'd clean up a little bit when they took the body or warn us to call people ahead of time. They didn't prepare us. I went in first to open doors and windows because I was prepared for the smell of death. Just not the signs of him slipping and falling as he tried to get to his cell phone, eventually to be found face down 2 feet away from it. On a lighter note, my dad had a lot of boxes of photos of my sister and I, and a lot of his childhood stuff. My dad never was the type to have possessions other than a few outfits and coffee mugs. Finding those boxes of things I'd never seen or known he had copies of was heartwarming. I'd have figured he'd tossed them long ago. I know he loved us, but he was never an outwardly sentimental man, so it took me by surprise. When my dad died of lung cancer, we found this really cool puzzle box. He had just died and my closest relatives and I were gathered around as I solved the puzzle box to open it. We get it open and we found none other than a ton of pot. Was hilarious and awkward at the same time. But even better than that, I found my 2 siblings he hid from the family for years. We're actually all currently sitting on the couch together. So, thanks you old hippie. R.I.P. After my uncle hung himself in his garage, my brother and I found a book on knot tying on top of a stack of books. It was an extremely dark moment. When my grandfather died, we found 3 live grenades in his closet, hundreds and hundreds of firearms, and a crate of C4 in the garage. Although I don't think he was trying to hide any of that stuff. After my grandmother passed away, I was helping clear her flat. She was apparently 87 when she died, but we also had suspicions that she was older. She had grown up in Nazi Germany and crossed the Berlin Wall as a Russian spy and then gave herself in. We had a lot of questions that she never answered. Then I found a cupboard full of notebooks. They were detailed diaries and gave a lot of answers. My mum was heartbroken though when she found the date of her birth. It only said it was born today, and then a week later said it has been named by my mother-in-law. This one is actually kind of heartwarming. My dad was a pretty reserved guy. While I knew in my heart he would lay down and die for me without a moment's hesitation, he never said I love you or I'm proud of you or anything like that. It's just who he was. After he died of cancer, we went to his office to clear it out. I'd never really been in his actual office since. On the rare occasions I'd see him at work, he'd usually meet me at reception. Well, when we went in there, it was practically a shrine to me and my sister. Every certificate, photo, newspaper clipping, program, etc. was hung up on the walls of his office. A number of people came by to pay their respects as we were clearing things out, and again, I heard he was so proud of you. I've heard so many things about you. It's nice to meet you in person. You were so special to your father. He spoke the world of you. Honestly, you could have knocked me over with a feather. Definitely one of the more bittersweet moments in my life. R.I.P. Dad. Miss you. Edit. Thank you so much for the upvotes and the Reddit Gold X2. And thank you even more for sharing all your kind words and your stories. And, for those of you blessed enough to still have them, go hug your parents right now. When my great-grandpa died, we had to wear surgical masks to clean his house out because he chain-smoked big fat cigars for decades. The smell was ridiculous. At one point, my uncle came running out of the house with a box screaming I found his skin flicks. And later on, my cousin came out of the house with a light-up Christmas reindeer under his arm and a very serious look on his face. Someone asked him what he was doing, and without breaking stride or changing his expression, he said, "I want this." My best friend was killed in a car accident when he was 15. I was like another son to his parents, and a few weeks after his death, his mother asked me to come over to help go through his things, mainly because we basically treated our clothes as one gigantic wardrobe and half the stuff in his closet was mine, including the shirt he was wearing when he was killed. When we first went into his room, his mom said to me, "You have 10 minutes to remove anything you don't want me to see," and she handed me a duffel bag. I shut the door behind me, pulled out his sock drawer and took out the dime bag I had stashed there. Then I lifted his mattress and grabbed the 2 Penthouse magazines and the video my brother gave us. I zipped up the bag and opened the door. Together we went through his stuff, me grabbing my clothes and her giving me his clothes that she knew I wore all of the time. After a few minutes, I decided to play some music. I turned on his stereo and hit play on the cassette player, and Journey's Faithfully starts playing. After a few seconds, dubbed over the song, is my friend's voice, saying mushy things to this girl he's been crushing on since 8th grade. I listened for a minute, then I just bust out laughing. That crap was so corny that I couldn't help it. Once I started laughing, his mom starts laughing and crying at the same time. It was the first time she had laughed since the accident, and later in, she said it was a turning point for her in her grieving process. To me, it was my best friend just being goofy over some girl. I still think about him almost every day even though it's been 31 years. Was wondering how far back this was when you mentioned Penthouse mags. My husband and I cleaned out my grandma's house after she passed. She was a big time hoarder, but luckily of the pack rat variety, so everything was neatly packed away in thousands of boxes and drawers. It took us nearly 3 weeks to get everything out of the house, and we found so many things that I had never knew my grandma had done. She built a boat with her first fiancé prior to marrying my grandpa. She traveled the world making friends with some of the most interesting people, like a legit member of African royalty whom she had a long-lived pen pal friendship. Among the cool memories we found beautiful jewelry, dresses that she had kept for us as gifts that we never received. I also found out that my dad had been a baby model for Sears through the newspaper clippings she kept. It was an emotional, wild ride for those 3 weeks. Her son sold most of the non-keepsake items in a garage sale and made nearly $4,000. All things priced under $5, so you can imagine how much stuff she had accumulated throughout the years. She was the coolest, spunkiest grandma, and I miss her every day, but I am glad I got to learn so much more about her through her collections, or junk as my dad would call it. My grandma died when I was 16 after getting cancer for the 3rd time. My granddad moved into a smaller apartment and my cousins and I helped to clean out their house. A side note, there are 9 of us, aged at the time from 12 to 26. In the house, we found more than 20 wrapped presents and envelopes of money, addressed to all of us. They were for the big occasions that she knew she wouldn't live to see us have. Before she had died, she had organized 21st birthday presents for those of us who weren't yet 21, engagement presents, and wedding presents, each with a card written by hand. I remember being so overwhelmed with emotion. She was an incredible woman who loved her family dearly and wanted to celebrate her grandchildren, even if she couldn't be there herself. My grandma and grandpa did the same thing when they both got diagnosed with cancer in 2006. I had no idea. When I graduated high school in 2010, I was going through my cards and found one with her handwriting and instantly lost it. I still have it. My great uncle was a loving man. He and my great aunt owned a couple horses, and every morning he would open the window and call to them. In horse speak, of course, they would always answer back. They lived in Casper, Wyoming. Back in the 50s, he had worked in the oil fields and came home filthy with it every day. My great uncle loved people. When the space station Mir was about to burn up and re-enter, he had all the neighborhood over to his place to watch it one last time. He had a small Christmas tree in his living room, year-round, upon which he hung pictures of friends he was currently praying for. If you met the man, you could not leave without him giving you a Susan B. Anthony quarter and a bouquet, which was to remind you to be tough, but always say your prayers. This isn't one of those we tied an onion to our belts. As with the style at the time things, he meant it with all the love he had to give. which was a lot. I was about 8 and pretty clueless, but my great uncle Gordon showed me and my sister something that kept both of our attention. He liked to collect eclectic things, one of which was authentic Chinese furniture. He explained to us that on every piece of authentic Chinese furniture, there are hidden compartments for either deeds, money or other contraband the communist government wanted to destroy. He had 3 pieces of real furniture and it was one of the greatest puzzles of my childhood trying to find the secret compartments. Being 8, I didn't know until my dad told me decades later that Uncle Gordon was very sick. The years of working in oil had him growing metastatic cancer all over his lungs. He was not a smoker a day in his life, and he was in constant, agonizing pain. He still loved people so much, while probably wishing he could just die. A couple years later, he did. We went up for the funeral, and afterwards, when we went to his house, I ran into his bedroom, because I had to find the last secret compartment, and I did. Inside, I found $5,000 cash, in $20 bills, and a letter from my uncle on National Hemlock Society letterhead. It was written to whoever found it that he was tired of hurting so much every day. He explained that he went to Mexico a couple years before with my great aunt and purchased enough nitroglycerine pills to stop his heart. And he did it. I don't think he told my great aunt. I didn't realize it then, but my great uncle shaped how I feel about physician assisted suicide in that moment. Maybe suicide as a whole. I believe in God, and I do not believe that God would turn away my Uncle Gordon. He was a man deserving of rest and comfort. Anyways, I just hope someone sees this, so many of these things just get buried, and my great uncle deserves more than that. Thanks for reading. In 2005, my sister died in a jet skiing accident out on the lake. She was 11. I was 9. And after the funeral my parents decided it was time to go through her stuff to pack up and donate. I'm really nosy, and I really needed something to do, so I was allowed to help them. I served mostly as a runner boy for the items as they went through it, just sorting it in the living room while they went through everything in her room. Now, understand that the last thing she said to me was "I hate you." We had gotten in a fight just before she got on the jet ski with my aunt, and that's the last time we spoke. Anyways, going through her stuff I found a picture she had drawn of me, her and one of my other sisters, and a little note admit how much she loved her brothers and sisters, an art project for school of some sort if I'm not mistaken. This really helped put my mind at ease about the whole thing. I know she really loved me and that if she had known those would be the last words she said to me she would not have said it, but being 9 years old, watching her be in the hospital for 3 days, then waiting 4 more days for the funeral and whatnot to get to that picture. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with, but that picture helped. I never leave someone now when bad words have been exchanged, not knowing if that's the last thing they hear me say. I cannot in good conscience leave on a bad note. My dad is a cop who worked a case where this man who committed suicide had only one relative alive, his son. The son had cut off all talk as soon as he turned 18. 20 or more years ago, the son called my dad when he got to the house asking for assistance. He sounded pretty upset on the phone, so my dad raced over as soon as he could. The father was an alcoholic with little education and worked a factory job he got with no high school degree. He was believed to be not so smart for lack of better term. They stepped into the house to find hundreds of books, towering stacks, rooms full, furniture covered with books, all varying subjects from fiction to how-to, and in the front of each book was what the man had learned from it, almost like a summary. The son was blown away. He couldn't believe what his father had been doing with the last decades of his life. The books are going to be donated. The books the son didn't pack up and ship to read himself. Another thing, the son is smart as a whip. Now he knows where he gets it from. I found the will. Strange part was, there were no living people mentioned in it, including me, the executor. It all went to a church that's no longer functioning, so the estate is tied up in probate. My father died of a massive out-of-the-blue heart attack just a week before my wedding, which was the 28th of December, so right at Christmas too. He didn't suffer. It was clearly one of the dead before he hit the floor variety, but in the mad scramble to go through his rented house and get everything cleaned out while still putting the finishing touches on the wedding planning, I found a legal pad with some notes on it. It looked something like this. The 3rd of March 2013, 2 am 7/10. The 15th of March 2013, 3:30 am 4/10. The 21st of March 2013, 5 pm 6/10. The 2nd of April 2013, 2:15 pm 9/10. It was a list of chest pains and ratings of how bad. There was also a list of notes, all from very late at night, debating pros and cons of suicide. It always looked like this. Reasons for: tired. Everyone I know is dead. Body doesn't work well. Blind. He had lost vision in one eye. Nothing to do. It's inevitable. Reasons against: Whistleridge. Taken all together, it was pretty clear he knew a giant heart attack was coming and committed suicide by not going to the doctor. Any of a dozen common medicines would have reduced his risk factor hugely. He just gave up. I was literally the only reason he could find not to kill himself. At the time, what with the wedding and the holidays, also my birthday is the 21st of December, his was the 23rd of December, and his funeral was the 24th. I didn't have any time to think about the implications of that, but now, I love you, Dad. I personally packed up my little brother's room after he died. He was only 8 years old when he passed, so I didn't find anything risque. I did find a lot of rocks in his toy box though. Another 3 years later, I was helping clean out my grandma's house and found letters he had written her. I like how universal the love of rocks is to some kids. I'm 38 and have a small collection that me and my nephew bond over. I helped him start his collection. I'm sorry for your loss and your discovery warmed my heart. I hope you found some peace. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.